Hello, and welcome back to the American Field Trip Podcast. Brought to you now by LL Bean, an amazing longtime sponsor of American Field Trip. Super grateful for their support. As we're heading into the fall, it's August at time of recording. They got a lot of good flannels, a lot of good boots, a lot of good cozy apparel.
Coats.
If that's something that kind of, if like me, you cope with seasonal affective disorder by buying cozy things, check them out. They are
flannel sheets, bedding, slippers.
Really good.
Sleds if you're feeling brave enough to go outside.
They are great.
So today we're going to talk about the top 10 most visited national parks from 2022.
Yes. And we're going to talk about three things. We're going to answer three questions about all these. I think the first one is why? Why would you want to go see this place that apparently everybody else wants to see? Why are there so many visitors? Because sometimes the answer to question number one is not also the answer to question number two. Mm-hmm. And three, what's it like to actually visit this place? Is it insane or is it still cool?
Yes.
So number one, last year's number one most visited park was Great Smoky Mountains National Park, which if you don't follow this list like I do, that might surprise you. And maybe you haven't heard of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. If you live in the East, and especially if you live in the Southeast or like Appalachia, you have definitely heard of Great Smoky Mountains National Park. But like if you're from California, maybe you've never heard of this place. It is the most visited by a really wide margin, like really wide. It got almost 13 million visitors, and number two on our list got 4.7. So do the math there. It's a lot more people went there.
Yeah.
And so I guess answering our questions here, why would you want to go there? It's really nice. It's beautiful. There's beautiful mountains. The Appalachian Trail runs through it, which may be part of number two, the answer to question number two. It's just really beautiful. It's beautiful deciduous forest, Appalachian Mountains. There's lots of amazing hiking, just like beautiful waterfalls, beautiful trees in the fall when the leaves change. It is just like otherworldly. It's amazing if you can hit it when the leaves are really popping off.
Which is also when many other people are trying to hit it. So complicated.
And so I guess number two, why is it getting so many visitors? Besides those reasons, it's just general beauty, like natural beauty and appeal. It is really close to a lot of population centers. So in terms of its location, it's in a fairly populated area. You know, it's close to a lot of mid-sized cities, and it's within a day's drive from some big ones.
And notably is one of very few national parks in the East in general. So not only is it close to a lot of population centers, but there are not other national parks that would divert some of that traffic.
Yeah.
Or some of that like vacation crowd.
Yeah.
You know?
Someone wants to go to a national park, they're not, choosing between arches and canyonlands. It's Great Smoky Mountains. That's one big reason. Second big reason is there's a lot of stuff, well, kind of two main things that run through it. The first, I mentioned the Appalachian Trail runs through it. So if you're through hiking the Appalachian Trail, which I guess probably it's not millions of people.
No.
But a lot of people section hike it. Like that trail goes through it. And
it's a very popular place to hike. And
very
again,
popular hiking.
In terms of the East Coast, like you just have...
It's some of the best hiking in that region.
Yeah, you just have like fewer possibilities for outdoor recreation because it's a vastly more populated area of the country.
Yeah. Also, the Blue Ridge Parkway runs through it, which the Blue Ridge Parkway was the number one visited national park site overall, was the Blue Ridge Parkway.
Did you know that a road can be a national park site?
It can.
It can.
And
There's
there are
a bunch
several
of them. And the Blue Ridge Parkway sees more visitors than any other park site. Over 15 million, I think.
Mm-hmm. It's a lot. And it is...
Yeah, almost 16 million.
A lot of what we just said about Great Smoky Mountains can be said of the Blue Ridge Parkway.
It runs
really beautiful.
It runs from the south end of Shenandoah, which is a very north-south park, to Great Smoky Mountains, to and through Great Smoky Mountains. So you can visit one without the other, although I find that a little
Why would
odd.
you do one and not the other?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if you're like out for a joyride.
A visit's always paired, and it's a very popular drive. Like, people that are into motorcycling, people that are just into driving and road trips in general. It's an iconic drive.
If you live anywhere around there, you do a fall foliage, day drive through that area. So
yeah. And it's beautiful. It's beautiful.
But it's a staggering number of visitors. The first time that we went there, I was really surprised by how many more people are there versus other parks. And I remember we asked a park ranger, why does it get so many more visitors than the other parks? And she seemed a little surprised by my question. Like, well, of course,
we're not local, so
it's beautiful. And there's such rich diversity of plant and animal life here. And I was like, yes, but that's all the national. I mean, it's not unique in that sense. Although,
I mean, it is, but
it is unique to it. But like,
it's the margin is just so big. Like, it just gets so many more.
Anyway, so but she didn't say anything about population centers or anything else like that would be a draw. She also did say that it is free, which is true.
It is free to get into.
The land that it is on, post being stolen, was donated to become a national park, and that donation was contingent on the fact that it would always be free to visit. So
donated by the Rockefellers.
Yeah.
Which
Fun
actually knock around the national parks for long enough and you will
run into the Rockefellers
run into the Rockefellers a lot. They did many things.
Wasn't it fun when billionaires did public works projects instead
by public works projects you mean buy large swaths of land and then give them to the National Park Service with a lot of strings attached, like
build libraries or something,
Yeah. Anyways, we could do a whole episode on the Rockefellers and their relationship with the national parks.
But I also, I was thinking about the ranger, like, it's like $15 to get into most parks. This is not an issue of like, well, we can't afford to go anywhere else, but Great Smoky Mountains is free, so we're going to go there. It was just kind of, I don't know.
Yeah, I bet it helps. I'd go somewhere on a whim if it's free.
I understand why there are so many visitors, but it does still surprise me how many more visitors there are there.
Anyways.
In terms of the visiting,
how does it feel?
In terms of the visiting experience, it's a really big park. It's not as big as some of the Western parks, but it's quite big. There's a lot of different places to go. So while it feels busy and while it can be difficult to get a campsite or something like that, I mean, especially in the high season, you need to plan ahead. But it is big enough that I didn't feel like it was crazy.
In terms of the feel, it is, I mean, there's traffic, like especially during leaf season. It is, you'll get traffic.
A lot of traffic.
You definitely need to plan where you're going to stay. It's not a park that you can kind of just show up to. And I think this is true of all the eastern parks, everything sort of east of the Mississippi. Stuff west of the Mississippi, even if you like don't plan at all, like if you go to Yosemite with zero plan, like you can go park on some Forest Service land somewhere, and like there's usually something available to you. It might be wildly inconvenient, but like there is something. Here, like there may actually not be something. Like you need to plan ahead. You need to make sure you know where you're going to stay. But if you do that, I did not find it to be crazy at all. Like we were there in the fall.
We were there kind of later fall. So the foliage had peaked and that helped.
Yeah.
I think that we were definitely like on the back end of a huge wave of travelers. I would say that, so traffic on the Blue Ridge Parkway peaks in July and October. And I would say that if you're visiting Great Smoky Mountains during those times, be prepared for a lot of traffic, maybe standstill traffic. And I would plan to just park and take a hike somewhere rather than just trying to drive around a lot, because there is a lot on a weekend, especially a lot of people.
So busy, but still very much worth it.
The other
Lives up to the hype.
The other thing about the visitation is that it has a long season. You can visit, because of the weather there, you can visit in all 4 seasons pretty comfortably. So
different activities in different seasons. But
but it for sure is drawing numbers from the entire year, and not like Yellowstone we'll talk about, just in the summer.
Anyways, talk about our number 2, Maddie.
The number 2 most visited national park in the U.S. is the Grand Canyon, with 4.73 million visitors a year. The Grand Canyon I feel like it's unique among national parks. I shouldn't say unique, but it is a place that most people just stop and look at. You go and you look at it, and then you go to a different part of it and you look at it from there, and then you go to another location and you look at it from there. People hike for sure. There's a lot of hiking to be done, but the hiking is fairly strenuous unless you are staying on the rim or, not at the canyon, not going into the canyon at all. So I feel like it is a little more difficult at the Grand Canyon to completely immerse yourself in it without visitors. To me, it feels like a very communal experience. We've been a few times, and it always feels very communal.
So why would you want to visit the Grand Canyon?
Oh, because it is grand.
It's very grand.
It's huge.
It's very big.
It is not the deepest or largest canyon in the world.
I thought it was the largest. Is it not the largest?
Is it?
I'm pretty sure it's the largest. You can see the thing from space. Nope, Nepal. Well, but what is largest? Is it like longest or like by volume? I don't know. This is not important, but it's beautiful. It's majestic. It's amazing. It's an amazing geologic feature.
Yeah, the Grand Canyon is absolutely stunning. It is a massive geological formation. It is famous around the world, and among national parks draws a huge number of international visitors. It has really become part of this like southwestern loop that I think a lot of international visitors come and do in the US that incorporates a few national parks, and the Grand Canyon is one of the hallmarks of that trip. Yeah. So there's a lot of tour buses. There are just a lot of people coming from all over.
So you're getting into why so many visitors. You can get at it from like, it's a day trip from Vegas too. Like there's a lot of ways for someone who is coming from somewhere other than the United States to like get to it and go see it. Yeah,
and it's one of the most famous places in the United States. Yeah. A famously popular country to visit. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, this one absolutely makes sense. Totally tracks how and why there are so many visitors. In terms of why you would want to go visit it, I think the reasons are much the same, that it is stunning. It is kind of a bucket list item, I think, for a lot of people. Yeah. Mm-hmm. One of the few places that Ron Swanson says it's acceptable to cry.
Yeah, that's saying something.
Which says a lot.
Yeah. So what's the experience of, I guess you talked about this a little bit already, but what's the experience like?
Yeah, I'm kind of mixing up the questions a little bit. But the experience of being there, I feel like, is very communal. Unless you are hiking a lot or very much there in the off season, there's gonna be a lot of people around. However, we've been a few times and I've not felt like it definitely has the infrastructure for the number of visitors that it has.
Like Yellowstone, they've planned for the number of visitors that they're going to get.
And so there are large parking lots. There are a lot of facilities. There's a huge visitor center. It's set up to receive the number of people that it does and the type of visitors that it does. I feel like it's one of the parks that is best set up for the visitors that it gets. Yeah. Because it gets a lot of tour buses and a lot of people that are there just for like one view of it, Yeah. So I think it's a great experience visiting it, actually. I didn't feel overwhelmed there. I didn't feel like it was bananas trying to get a parking spot. It's also a park where you kind of drive in and park and then stay in that place for a while. You're not as much trying to like drive around to see stuff, which I think is really helpful. Yeah. Some of the parks where it feels the most stressful to have a lot of visitors around, you're kind of all trying to get to a smaller location, go into a canyon or go around a loop or
like Yellowstone.
Anyway,
after we just said Yellowstone was prepared for this, there's places where it fails.
So yeah, I think the Grand Canyon is one of the best experiences of a super busy park. I think it's a really easy place to visit. Yep. And super worthwhile.
Don't fear the crowds.
Don't fear the crowds at Grand Canyon. It's fine. They're ready for you.
You'll love it. You'll have your spot on the railing to take that selfie. It'll be great.
Don't try to like walk out onto a ledge to make it look like you're there by yourself.
Crop everybody out. I feel like AI will probably do that for you now on your phone. There's got to be a way. There's an app for that.
Also, it's fine to show in pictures that you weren't there by yourself.
Yeah, but or anyway. That.
Okay.
Number three, Zion National Park, clocking in with 4.69 million visitors, just shy of the Grand Canyon. Zion. So why would you want to visit Zion? And I will say Zion, not Zion. Zion is in the Matrix. Zion is in Utah.
This is so stupid.
This is how, as someone who lives in Utah, I just say it correctly, folks. Zion's an interesting one amongst the southern Utah parks. Because there's a bunch of them clustered right in there, relatively close to each other. Mm-hmm. All the sort of southern Utah Red Rock parks. Zion doesn't. It's not like Arches that has arches. The titular, the eponymous arches. It's not very big. It's comparatively
tiny.
Very small. So Canyonlands
minuscule.
has, as the name suggests, many canyons, but it's very big. And Zion is very small. So it is interesting to me that Zion comes in above all of the other southern Utah parks as receiving the most visitors. And I would actually be interested in as to why that is. But I think that why you would want to go to Zion is that it's gorgeous. Like this little canyon, comparatively little Zion Canyon, is breathtaking. It's just stunning. There's a road paved up the whole thing so you can drive all the way up and see the whole canyon. And it's breathtaking. It's one of the most beautiful canyons that you can visit. There are several really iconic hikes there. I think notably Angel's Landing and the Subway are two just iconic, very Instagrammable hikes. They're visually stunning. They're a little bit strenuous. They feel a little dangerous and are a little bit dangerous. I think
still accessible for like most.
Yes, but like most people can do it.
Your average hiker.
If you're a person that hikes sometimes, you can probably go do these hikes with some planning and preparation.
And a permit.
And a permit. Now they're permitting them because it's gotten so busy. And all of that, I think, combines, like we've talked about parks before that seem to have kind of a marketing problem where they've got a lot of cool stuff, but there's not really like a real headline to grab people. Zion does not have this problem. Zion has like Angel's Land, just like the postcard of the chains on Angel's Landing is like that's Zion. And that is so cool that it will bring people from all over the world to come and do that hike. So
it's very well known. I think one of the reasons that it's so well visited is because people loop it in with Grand Canyon. It's a lot closer than Moab for people who are visiting like Las Vegas, the Grand Canyon, at some of this like this little southwestern.
You're based
loop.
in St. George or Las Vegas. It's closer.
Very easy to visit.
Yeah.
Very easy.
Hiking's amazing. There is a lot of opportunity to do things like rock climbing and canyoneering and some more technical things that are, it's a good place to get introduced to that. Another fun thing to do there. There's a lot of really cool history. There's archaeologic sites, history, both like pioneer history and native history. Just a lot of very really interesting stuff. It's a greatest hits playlist. It's all Zion is all bangers. It's really, really good. Mm-hmm. Is it the best one in southern Utah? I don't know. I think that's very debatable, but for some reason everyone's going to Zion. Why are all those people going? I mean, kind of talked about that a little bit.
It's very famous.
It's famous. It gets looped in with other things. I do truly think Instagram has something to do with it. Like the sheer photogenic appeal of some of the scenes and hikes there.
Very scenic.
Very scenic. And it's pretty close. It's close to St. George. It's
and Las Vegas. And I mean, it's not crazy far from Southern California. It's it's very visitable from a lot of areas.
And it's very like, it has a real easy entry point. Like literally there's one road that goes into the park. There is Kolob Canyons, but most people don't go there. Most people go to Zion Canyon. And it's a pretty well laid out visit.
What does it feel like to visit Zion?
It depends a lot on when you go there. If you go there in the high season, it's going to feel very busy. It's still going to be beautiful, but you're going to be jostling around a lot of people. This is one where people do complain a lot about crowding. They do have some things in place to help with this. I think they permit entrance to the park now. Do they permit entrance to the park?
They were, but I don't know if they are currently.
Check before you visit. They may be permitting entrance. Most of the best hikes and sort of the iconic ones are now all permitted.
Because there's one entry point, you're going to be queuing for a while to get into the park.
But once you get in, they have a shuttle that actually is pretty ideal. The shuttle, if you visit there in the off season, the shuttle won't be running. I kind of wish it ran all the time just because it makes a visit so convenient, because it'll drop you off at all the hikes, go see everything, you get back on the bus. Similar to like Glacier, where you may have to wait for the shuttle, but in all, it makes your visit a lot better, even with crowds.
But Zion has so many people concentrated in such a tiny area that this is one where for sure you're going to feel that visitation.
I would say go in the off season.
Go in the off season. And again,
go to another park.
Because of the weather, that visitation is spread out over the course of the year. There are higher seasons. It does get very hot in the summer, but visitation, remains throughout the year. There's never a time when you can't get into Zion.
Yeah. It's always open.
But again, it's tiny.
Yeah. But worth a visit. It is, like I said, all bangers. It's amazing. But there's a lot of really, really cool spots around that if I was planning a visit down there, I wouldn't go to Zion. I would go to some other stuff close by.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and we can say that because we've been to Zion. Yeah. But it might not be something that I'd go back to again and again and again because it's so busy. Yeah. So, just take for that what you will.
Anyways, take us on. Number 4.
Number 4 most visited is Rocky Mountain National Park with 4.3 million visitors. This is in, obviously, the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. This is north and a little bit west of Denver, pretty close to Boulder. So you do have some large population centers that it's drawing from for visitation. Reasons you'd want to visit? Like
the mountains. They are very rocky.
They're very rocky.
They're very good.
They're very beautiful. There's a ton of hiking. There's a ton of great recreation to be done there. And that's the primary reason that people visit, is for scenery and to hike. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of wildlife. There are quite a few winter activities that is not as accessible or popular, but especially for local people, there's a lot of stuff to do in the winter: cross-country skiing and snowshoeing and that. So again, this is a year-round destination, although it is very snowy in the winter. So visitation drops down precipitously.
Mostly you're going in the summer, mostly in late summer.
Why does it receive so many visitors? Again, it's very famous. The Rocky Mountains are very famous. Colorado is a very popular destination for people both internationally and around the country, around the United States. Colorado is well known for its mountains and things to do in the mountains, for skiing and hiking and all of these things.
And if you want to experience like truly high elevation and some of the like geography and wildlife and stuff that you get above 12,000 feet, you can drive there in Rocky Mountain National Park. So the road that goes all the way up to the top is very high. Like in terms of roads that you can drive
above 14,000 feet.
It doesn't take you above 14.
Okay, it takes you above 12.
Because 14 is like
you have to climb to 14.
Yeah, you climb to 14 usually. It takes you very high up there, which is itself kind of notable. Usually you got to hike very long ways. It's usually a very long hike to get up that high. But in Rocky Mountain National Park, you can drive most of the way up there, which also gives it access to hiking a lot of peaks that are 14,000 feet.
Because you only got to do the tip.
Yeah. Well, I don't think there's any that you just got to do the tip, but they get you higher up there.
You can get closer.
You can get closer.
So totally understand why it's such a draw. Has a huge draw for me. We went in the summer during a period of high visitation, and it was wonderful.
It's a big park.
It's a big park. Again, the visitors, those 4 million some odd visitors, are concentrated during a summer season. You can visit year round, but like summer and fall is really peak there because it's very snowy in the winter, and into the spring, you're still not going to be able to access a lot of the park because the snow doesn't melt. So those visitors are concentrated into that period of time, but they're not concentrated into one tiny area like Zion Canyon. It's a very big park, and there's a lot of things to do, and a lot of people hike there, unlike somewhere like Great Smoky Mountains, where most people, according to the rangers that we talked to, most people are experiencing that from their cars or from within 20 feet of a road or a parking lot. So but in Rocky Mountain, a lot of people are hiking, and so I feel like people just spread out more there.
Yeah.
So it can definitely feel busy. It's definitely one to plan ahead on. Because it's so big, you don't want to be driving in and out every single day. If you're doing a multi-day trip, you don't want to be staying far away.
Get a campsite, find somewhere to stay.
And you're going to have to plan for that. But I feel like this one is very doable, even though it's so well visited.
Yeah. I wouldn't be scared of the crowds in the high season.
No, I think it's still super pleasant.
Still doable, still good.
Definitely plan, but don't be scared off of it. It's well worth a visit and it's super pleasant.
It's rad. Yeah. We love it. Number 5, Acadia National Park. Acadia, very different. I love that the top 10 includes it's a variety and in a lot of different geographic locations. Acadia is in Maine. And why would you want to visit Acadia? The location actually is one of them. If you are in New England or the eastern United States and you want to visit a national park, your options are very limited. Acadia is a really good option and is one of the only options. If you want to visit a capital N, capital P national park, it just has a lot of large population centers like New York and Boston and, big cities that it's the closest one to all of those. So if you live there, it's a good destination. That's not why you would want to visit there. I'm mixing my questions, but why I wanted to visit there is the really unique landscape. So it is like if you've ever looked at a Winslow Homer painting or like read a book about, like read Moby Dick or something, and just if you have any kind of romantic thing going with like lighthouses and the sea, then you will vibe with Acadia. It is rocky little pebbly beaches with like waves breaking on like craggy little things, and it's really beautiful. It's a bunch of little. Well, the park itself is on Mount Desert Island, which is like this big island. And it's not big, but it's an island. And there's a bunch of little kind of smaller islands, bigger than the ones around it. It's just very like lighthouses and like fishing boats and little forests and like mossy things, and it's landscape wise really, really nice. It also is wrapped up in a bit of that old New England kind of stuff. Like again, the Rockefellers had a house there, I think, as did a lot of other sort of wealthy socialites of that period had houses on Mount Desert Island where
it makes you want to eat a lobster.
It's
got a vibe.
Yeah, and you can eat a lobster there. The little town, the town that's there, Bar Harbor, has really great lobster, like lobster rolls and things. It's a real destination. Like there's little bed and breakfasts, there's good food, there's fun activities like biking and boating, hiking. It's just really well set up. It's one of those old school national parks where, the Rockefellers or some other really rich person bought it all, and then they later sent in the CCC to like really develop it for tourist visitation. They've got like a great road. There's paths. It's just really well set up, and it's a fun destination. Why people are visiting it? All of that. Like it's just a great place to go. Close to population centers, easy to get to. I mean, it's a drive from most cities, but you drive into it. There's services there. There's amenities. It's very accessible. It's great.
It's a park that like your mom could go to and just like stay at a hotel and go into the park every day and do different things. You don't have to stay. You don't have to camp. You don't have to stay in a lot. Like
you can,
and
but many do.
It just
but
feels,
you don't have to.
It just feels very easy to visit. There's a lot of outdoorsy stuff to do, but it feels less outdoorsy to me than other parks in the sense that you don't have to really be very into outdoor recreation to do a lot there and to like vibe
something
with
for
it.
everyone. There's really something for everybody. Yeah. You can sit in a cafe and eat lobster rolls all day if you want. But yeah, what's it like to visit? Like that. It's great. It's great.
It's really easy.
Bring a cable knit sweater, eat a lobster roll, take a long hike,
eat a popover.
Get a popover at the pond. I forget the name of the pond. You can get a popover.
Jordan
in the
Pond.
Park. Is it Jordan Pond? It may be.
I feel like Acadia is very easy to visit and there's a lot to do. It is well set up for the number of visitors it receives. They have a shuttle there. They have a lot of facilities and things in the area that help with that. So to me, it didn't feel swamped.
No. It's busy, but busy like anything is on the East Coast.
For sure busy. And if there's a hike that you're really interested in doing, it's one of those things where you need to talk to a ranger and make sure you know what time you need to get to the parking lot in order to get a space. There's not a ton of parking. But also the shuttle is really helpful for that. And yeah, I feel like Acadia is not a...
Go to Acadia.
It's not complicated.
Yeah. Run, don't walk. It's amazing. And it's one of those ones, I think, like Yellowstone and Teton and some of these other top 10 parks that you can really visit again and again. Like it can be like a yearly family trip kind of thing. And it's good every time. Like
and I think it is. I think it is for a lot of people.
It is. And you get the vibe there too that like, oh yeah, this is, it's not a novelty trip. It's like the trip that everyone takes every year for a lot of families.
Not like a one-off.
Yeah.
So the sixth most visited national park in 2022 was Yosemite. That tracks.
Yep.
3.67 million visitors. I mean, why would you want to visit Yosemite? It's obvious if you've seen it ever at all. Yeah. It is absolutely gorgeous. One of my favorite scenic destinations that I've ever... I mean, it's one of the best places I've ever seen.
Yeah.
It is beautiful in every way. There are so many kinds of recreation to do there. It is for sure a destination for people all over the world.
But also a lot of local people. Again,
but a lot of local people.
Like Acadia, it's the yearly family trip. For
yeah, it feels like a place that people return to again and again. And it's a very for people who live around there, it's tradition to go often. I feel like I know so many people who go yearly.
Yeah. A lot of Bay Area people, a lot of Californians.
I mean, for me, like the hiking is top notch. One of my favorite places
S-tier hiking
ever hiked. And I constantly want to go back there. And I can't think of a reason not to visit it, except that it is very busy. And it is a place where you feel the busyness, I think. In Yosemite Valley, there's a lot of people.
It can be very busy.
It's a big park, but most people are at least going to the valley for some amount of their
You want to go look
stay.
at it. I think driving through Yosemite Valley is like if you've ever been to the National Mall in Washington, D.C., and you've driven down the National Mall and there's like stately granite monuments and like big, beautiful buildings and things. That's what Yosemite Valley feels like, except fully natural. Like you drive through, it feels like a museum.
It's so iconic and it's so grand and massive, and you feel your size, and you also there are just so many people there. So it's a little tricky for sure. Again, one that you're not going to want to be traveling in and out of. Like Acadia, you could leave every day, stay outside of the park, drive back in, you'd be fine. Yosemite, it's too far away from stuff to do that. You don't want to have to make that trek in and out every day.
Spend a lot of your time driving, depending on what you want to do. But if you want to be in the valley every day, it's hard to do that without staying in the valley.
Or even not. There's not very many places in Yosemite, like destinations in Yosemite that are really close to.
Yeah.
I mean, you gotta drive into there.
It's like Yellowstone. It's a big park,
and it gets a lot of traffic. And they are doing things to mitigate that. They are permitting entrance. They are working on keeping the madness down. But I don't see visitation to Yosemite slowing down at all.
People aren't going to get over Yosemite.
No, it's not get overable.
And like the popularity is not new. Like Yosemite has been iconic and wildly popular forever.
It is a place also that like diehards seem to be willing to put up with the crowds because it's so amazing. Like people will go there and climb every year, and they're not giving up on it and finding another destination because Yosemite's so crazy. Like they'll just keep going and dealing with the crowds. And I think that's the case for a lot of people because there's nothing like it around there. Unlike Zion or something where like, you can get comparable things. It's unique. So the experience of going there, I mean, I feel like you definitely feel the crowds and it feels busy. If you are there in the peak season, if you're there in the summer, I still think it's totally worth it. Definitely plan ahead.
Yeah, it requires planning.
Ahead. You got to plan ahead.
Yosemite trip requires a lot of planning.
Everything we said in our podcast about like kind of our episode about feeling kind of getting away from the crowds or how to deal with being in a very crowded place, that all applies very much to Yosemite. So
yeah.
But I mean, It's worth it.
It's worth it. It's worth it. Again, it's one of those ones like Zion. I think Zion is unique in my mind because I would say maybe try another one. Try something close. Yosemite, I'd say no. Just do the planning and figure out how to make it happen because it's very worth it.
You can do it. It's not undoable.
Yep. But it does require maybe logging on at a weird time to snag a campsite or
something to plan for. It's very much it's worth it.
Yep. Number 7, Yellowstone. Oh man, where do we begin on Yellowstone? Yellowstone has kind of become our yearly family trip in a lot of ways. We've been to Yellowstone. We have made return visits to Yellowstone more than any other national park.
Yep.
And reasons for that, I think Yellowstone is a really unique mix of unique things. Like there's parts of Yellowstone you can see in other places, but Yellowstone brings it all together in a way that's very accessible and just a really fun trip. Like it's really good. So you get the geothermal features of Yellowstone, which again, there's geothermal stuff in other places. Yellowstone by far has the most and the coolest and the biggest, like all of the geothermal stuff.
I mean, I guess it depends who you're talking to, but like, yeah, it's massive.
In the States, at least, like there's no, I mean, there's like, if you want to see some geothermal stuff, you can also go to Lassen Volcanic National Park and they've got some stuff that's really similar to Yellowstone
but there's a reason Yellowstone is incredibly famous.
Yeah.
For this.
It is big and grand, and there are things that you will see there that are extremely rare globally in terms of like geothermal stuff. Also, you have got the wildlife, which is kind of the other big thing. We talked about Katmai in our 10 least visited parks, that the draw there being the wildlife viewing. I think Yellowstone is a very similar draw. And I mean, everyone goes to Yellowstone and they want to see the big five. They want to see like a bison or a bear or a wolf. They want to see one of these cool, like big mammals. Yeah. That really have been driven out of every other habitat in the lower 48 at this point, except for places in Yellowstone. And they've gone out of their way to ensure that they're still there, to the point of doing controversial things like reintroducing wolves into Yellowstone, like things that have been very controversial in the scientific and political community. But it's there, like you can go see this stuff, and it's kind of the only place where you can do it like from your car, and you can drive around, and if you get lucky, you can see some of this stuff. And
I mean, you're like guaranteed to see a bison.
You'll see a bison.
I don't understand how you could go to Yellowstone and not see a bison.
You will see a bison. You'll see an elk, a bear if you get lucky, a wolf if you get really lucky. But you can, and you go there, stay there long enough, you can and you will.
But that's like for us, the thing that keeps drawing us back there, I feel like, is a lot of it's the wildlife. It's a really fun place to take our kids.
Super fun for kids.
Just like bubbling mud and bison. It's like, yeah, how can you beat that?
Like wild,
it's so fun.
Like, crazy Technicolor pools.
It's also by many metrics, the oldest national park in the U.S. And for that, I really love that about it, because there's a lot of park history. I like the signs the signs are old, the fonts are old, the lodges are old. I mean, it's just like, I really
prototypical
like that. And it's the park, it's like the only park that I really went to as a kid. And so it's very nostalgic for me. Those are like our personal reasons for visiting it. It's also an international destination.
Yep. I mean,
we see a lot of international visitors.
Oh, so many.
Every time we go there. Maybe more than anywhere else, except maybe the Grand Canyon.
Yeah. Yellowstone and the Grand Canyon seem to be the place that draw like large buses of international tourists.
Mm-hmm. It is well known.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
It's a big draw.
Yeah.
I think what's it like to visit Yellowstone? Your visit to Yellowstone can be many, many things. It is kind of an open-ended choose your own adventure park. It's funny that they Yellowstone does not suffer from marketing problems. Like they have a few really hooky, iconic things like Old Faithful and like the big mammals that really draw people in. But when you actually get there, it's really the tip of the iceberg of what the park actually contains. The park is just geographically enormous, and there is such a large variety of stuff that the experience of visiting it can be whatever you want. There's amazing, camping and backpacking and hiking. or you can spend the whole time on boardwalks looking at geothermal stuff, or you can just crouch in the weeds at an overlook just watching for a bear the whole time. Like you can really tailor the visit to what you want. The one thing that is common to all of those visits is, I think, driving. You will have a long drive to get to Yellowstone, depending on where you fly into, or if you're driving from a nearby city. It's just going to be a long drive. You're going to have a multi-hour drive to get there, and then you're going to be driving around 4 hours within the park to get to wherever you want. So the loop road, I feel like a lot of people are like, all right, we're going to drive the loop road and kind of do the tasting menu, like see a little bit of everything. And driving that loop road is like, if you do it and don't spend a lot of time stopping, it's an all day endeavor.
Yeah. Like you can barely stop at all and it'll take you all day.
It's a lot of driving.
Big loop, and you can't drive fast.
Nope. It's low speed limit.
And you will get stuck in like a bison jam.
Yep.
At some point.
Yep. And
which is where you can't proceed forward because there's traffic due to bison being on the road.
Either they're on the road or a bunch of people have stopped to look at some right off the road
and like haven't pulled all the way off.
Yes. Or like if a bear shows up, everybody just
stops.
Just lose. They're like, oh my gosh, they stop, they pull over, the cameras come out, and like, so there is great, that,
but it's slow.
Can be annoying if you're trying to get somewhere. There. Exciting if you're one of the people that want to see a bear and you're like, let's
Who wouldn't?
So the visit is you're going to have some just traffic moments, but other than that, you can kind of make it whatever you want.
And you got to plan ahead again because it's huge and you don't want to drive in and out every day unless you're staying at one of the gateway towns. I feel like that's very possible. You can drive in and out of West Yellowstone or like some of the,
there's like Gardner.
There's Gardner.
But pretty much West Yellowstone. So West Yellowstone's the big gateway town.
That's very possible, but you are going to be spending a lot of time driving, and even those gateway towns all fill up too. So you it's a place to plan ahead. And again, this is one of those places where the visitors are very concentrated into one season because Yellowstone is inaccessible for much of the year.
Yeah, the
winter there is like 8 months. Like it is snowy, and you can visit in the winter, but that's a very specialized visit, and you have to go by like snow coach or snowmobile, and you're not able to drive very much. So anyway,
it's busy.
So yeah,
they're well prepared for it, but you'll probably be frustrated with traffic at some point.
And parking.
Oh goodness, the parking. Oh, we didn't even talk about that. I can't. We have to move on. Talk about number 8, Maddie.
Okay, number 8 most visited is Joshua Tree National Park in California. Totally tracks. It's really close to LA and is an icon of Southern California. And I feel like it is a place where all the hipsters go on the weekend.
Yeah. I feel like in recent years, it's become the like, I would be interested because I think so much of my visitation has happened in sort of the era of Instagram. I'd be interested to see how much Instagram impacted Joshua Tree visitation, because it's one of those parks that seems to be a lot of like, I mean, we've been to all the national parks and there's only a few of them where I see people full on conducting photo shoots on a trail. Mm-hmm. Joshua Tree is one of them.
That's
like where you'll
one
see
of them,
that
and
happening.
Like we saw it a lot.
Yeah, several times.
Influencers per square mile in Joshua Tree is high.
Yeah.
It's
and
high.
we say that
it's
as influencers. It is. There's a lot of them there. It's
just like a very LA crowd, and it's a vibe for sure, and also a very rock climbing crowd. Obviously, it's a huge destination for rock climbers. It is a really fun place to visit. That visitation is spread out again over the course of a year, so it gets 3.06 million. So that's a quarter of the visitors of Great Smoky Mountains. It's not as big as like Yellowstone or Yosemite, but it is pretty big. And there are a lot of places in Joshua Tree where the visitors kind of congregate. And so if you're not in one of those areas, you're okay. I also feel like a lot of people come out for the weekend from LA. So if you're there during the week, we've been there a few times. It always feels like it slows down a lot when it's not the weekend.
And if you live in LA, it's like such a good weekend destination.
Yeah.
Like it's such a good weekend camping trip.
But this is not a park where I felt like it was so busy that it changed our experience massively.
Yeah. No, it was
just
okay.
Based on other visitors.
There were some funny moments where I was like, oh wow, you bought like you brought a light reflector on your hike and a change of clothing, like which is, I say that like it was notable, but it was like twice. Like I saw like 2 people which is notable. Like when you're on a hike, you're like, oh wow, you're like really doing some heavy photography.
We don't see a lot of people that are dressed really fashionably on most of the hikes that we do, because usually people are just like hiking. But like in Joshua Tree, we saw people that were like wearing
It's a very attractive crowd at Joshua
outfits,
Tree.
you know.
We're very, and maybe this is saying more about us than it is about the Joshua Tree visitors.
Just what we noticed. Anyway, but no, Joshua Tree is absolutely lovely, absolutely worth a visit. We kind of skipped over the reason that you'd want to visit it, but for me, that desert scenery just like,
oh, it's amazing.
It's so nice. The Joshua trees are obviously, this is my Joshua tree. Obviously that's the icon, but the rock formations,
so good.
So good. The sunsets, worth going out there just to watch the sunset. Like the prettiest, pinkest light. It's just stunning. And
there's a reason everyone's posting
there.
pictures of Joshua Tree.
It's very photogenic.
It's stunning. And it's one of those ones where it's hard. Like it's a little hard for me to explain just why it is. Like the Joshua trees obviously are unique, but they're like weird looking plants, you know, and there's a lot of weird looking plants in places.
The desert, they're yucca-ish.
Yeah, like they're not like, you know, they look like a Dr. Seuss thing, but like there's other places where you can get that kind of stuff. There's like cool rocks, but there's cool rocks in other places. It's like cool desert, but there's cool desert in other places. But for some reason, all of that in Joshua Tree is just like, ooh, like it's just perfectly balanced. Like it's just really, really unique and cool.
It also feels very good there. I can't explain this, and I'm not a very woo person, I don't think. But
there's like a ley line.
I do. I think there might be like a vortex,
some
or
like crystalline energy flowing through it.
It does. I feel like I get in touch with my inner like hippie there.
Does like Joni Mitchell start singing in your head, and you feel like a little like sort of desert spirit come over you?
Yes, I do.
It's a really cool place. Worth it.
That's what we're saying about all of these. We love all the parks.
Yeah, none of these are overrated.
None of these are overhyped. But I will say that like on this list, Joshua Tree is one of the ones where I didn't feel like the visitors like ruined it for me. And we visited in the year that it's talking about. So I know visitation there has like really gone up in recent years, but.
And there have been parks where the visitation kind of ruined it. Like we've had experiences where it was like kind of like not ruined, but like made worse by logistical like
it was a real drag
concerns. But none of these
that
were
wasn't one of them.
All of these were like so cool that you kind of forget about that as you get in there. And it wasn't that bad. It wasn't too crowded. I mean, it's a lot of people, but you can deal. It's good.
Take us to number 9, David.
Oh, number 9, Cuyahoga Valley National Park. Again, many of you may not have heard of this one, or you may have heard of it in like disparaging ways. I feel like a lot of people that I've talked to have sort of like ragged on Cuyahoga Valley a lot. And I just want to make a proposition that Cuyahoga Valley is awesome. I really like Cuyahoga Valley.
I love it.
I really, really like it. Why I like it, primarily it's just some really nice hiking in a part of the country that I don't want to say it doesn't have a lot of nice hiking, because there is good hiking around.
Yeah, there's a lot of state parks that have nice
There's a lot
stuff.
of really good state parks, and like really good ones in Ohio that are like notably very good. Like Hocking Hill State Park is amazing. Like there's some cool state parks in Ohio. But it is like, it's not like Utah or Colorado or the Western United States, where you're constantly confronted by the landscape that you live in. It's like mountains or beach or whatever. You don't really get that in Ohio. It's like, it just kind of looks like the Midwest, and there's trees and stuff, and it's kind of muggy in the summertime, and it's right by Cleveland. So it's very like the prototypical American suburb is where Cuyahoga Valley National Park is.
The Cleve.
It's the Cleve, the Cleve. And
we'd all like to flee to the Cleve.
You can, and we go visit Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And
it's a 30 Rock reference.
It's
for
right
the uninitiated.
It's right in the middle of this, and has some really beautiful hikes, like beautiful little ravines and waterfalls and babbling brooks and like lush forest. And it's just so it's notable just for what it is. Like it's very pristine and beautiful.
It's so cute.
But because of where it is, it feels like it's made more interesting to me personally. And if you know the history of Cuyahoga Valley National Park, it was like a national recreation area for a little bit, and large parts of the park have been reclaimed from like like, housing developments and stuff. Like there's a lot of interesting sort of land use history in the park.
The river was on fire at one time.
It used to be insanely polluted. Like it used to be like a Superfund site. It was really, really bad.
I think it's helpful with some of these parks that aren't as like smack you in the face stunning. We say this a lot, but like the more you learn about the history, the more you appreciate, that it exists now in the state that it does.
Yeah.
And Cuyahoga Valley for me is for sure one of those places where the history enriches your visitation so much.
Absolutely. It's also insanely easy to get to. I don't know if we mentioned it before in this episode. I-80 runs through the park. And when you go to the visitor center, the main visitor centers in the valley, the Cuyahoga Valley, there's an enormous bridge where Interstate 80 runs over top of the Cuyahoga Valley. And it's a big imposing thing on the landscape where you have this enormous concrete highway overpass that runs through the middle of it, which adds its own flavor. It's kind of interesting. But it does make it very easy to get to. You just take I-80, you get off, and then you've got amazing, hikes through the woods, waterfalls. It's super cool. It's very easy to get to.
So
also,
why
I
do
think
you
that's
think,
why there's so many people going there.
Okay. Yeah. That's what I was going to ask.
It is in Cleveland for all intents and purposes. Like it is in Cleveland.
It's very near to Cleveland.
Very close to Cleveland. It's very close to a lot of other regional cities.
And there's
Easy
not
to
a
get
lot of
to.
competition in terms of other national parks, which I think factors in.
Yeah.
Everywhere. All these well-visited parks in the East, I think that factors in a lot.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think this is one where it is a lot of local people go there. It's not one that's drawing people from like California. Like people from far away are not making a trip just to go to Cuyahoga Valley, but a lot of people may spend a day there on the way to somewhere else. And then a lot of people locally will make a trip to Cuyahoga Valley and go camp for a week or go on a trip,
When we've been there, it feels like that there's a big crowd that comes in on the weekend of local people who come to recreate, come to hike, and
it's utilized extensively by the local population.
There's a lot of good trails for biking, and anyway, so I think
like that in my park visit.
I do too.
Where it doesn't feel like all tourists, even though like I am a tourist in most of these situations. I like it where it feels like it's kind of Cleveland's backyard a little bit.
It for sure feels more to me like a state park, like a typical state park.
In the best way.
Yeah, and I really like that. It kind of surprises me that Cuyahoga Valley's in the top 10 over some like Indiana Dunes, which is very near to Chicago, and again is a place that a lot of local people will go to recreate or to hang out at the beach. But yeah, I mean, it's worth a visit for sure.
100%.
Especially if you're in that area.
Yeah. If you're in that area, what are you doing? Go spend a day in Cuyahoga Valley. Like it's delightful.
All right.
Number 10.
To round out our top 10 here, most visited national parks in the U.S., Glacier National Park, 2.91 million visitors. That feels appropriate. Glacier's pretty remote for the lower 48 for sure. It is, it's not hard to get there at all.
It's a long drive.
But it's very easy to get there, but you do have to drive to get there.
Usually a long drive.
And once you get there, it is huge. And there is so much to do. Those 2.91 million visitors are almost all, I would imagine, going in the summer. And with some of these other like high elevation northern parks, there's a late summer, like June, there's still going to be a lot of snow and road closures in Glacier, but July, August, September, that's when the visitation really peaks and when you can access everything. Reasons that we would want to Glacier is so many reasons.
It's all the mountains though. It's all around. I mean, I think most of it just orbits the mountains.
I think Glacier has the best scenery of any park in the lower 48.
Yeah, I think that's
debatable,
but you can back that up.
I mean, I really, really love the desert too. So it's a tough call, but like mountain scenery, can't beat it.
Better than Rocky Mountain, I think. And Rocky Mountain is what, number 4 on this list. And if we're talking mountain parks, like sorry to everybody who lives in Denver,
but okay,
I take Glacier over Rocky Mountain.
But here we don't need to compare.
I mean, we don't have to compare.
But here's what Glacier does have. Glacier has Going to the Sun Road, which is pretty widely regarded as one of the most scenic drives in the world. And this is a road that would absolutely not have been built had this park been established in the 21st century. But because it wasn't, they were like, let's make a
Let's
road
build a
right
road
through the
through it.
middle of this gorgeous thing.
Yeah.
And they did. And it's there. And, you know,
We all benefit from it now. That it
well, not everybody, maybe, but like
the wildlife probably, I don't know if they benefit from it, but
the average visitor
the
benefits
visitors love it.
greatly from it. So this is a very easy park to visit. It is very drivable. It's very well established. There are a lot of resources.
There's amenities. You can get a burger inside the park. There's places to stay. Like there's little hotels. There's campsites.
Like Yellowstone, it feels very old school and it's got all the lodges and all the old signage, and it feels very classic NPS, which I love. And there's a ton of history. There's a ton of national park history. There's a ton of indigenous history. There is something for everyone there.
Yeah. This is another like full range of amenities. Choose your own adventure.
One of my favorite places in the world.
Yeah, it's amazing.
By far. And I love it.
And I think so. Glacier is, if you're looking at the lower 48 and what you can get to without leaving the country or having to cross a body of water or take an airplane, I think Glacier might be the most scenic mountain scenery you can get. And it's like a little. It's like an appetizer of Alaska. Like it's a little like preview of what you will get if you drive further north into the Canadian Rockies or on to Alaska, where it all just gets bigger and bigger and more dramatic, and the glaciers get bigger and the mountains get bigger. But that little bit down there in northern Montana is just like, it's kind of where it all meets. You know, you get like this crazy dramatic rocky stuff, and then all of the sort of western United States like Great Plains. It's just a really unique little combo of ingredients that is perfect.
I feel like we've said unique a lot in this episode, but thing is,
they all are unique. That's why they're cool.
They're national parks.
That's their thing. They're unique.
So why does Glacier draw so many visitors? Well, it is
all stated things.
All the things that we've said. It's so beautiful. It's so the scale of it is so massive. So I feel like it's up there with Yellowstone and Yosemite as one of these iconic places to visit in the country. And I think it's a bucket list destination for a lot of people. I don't know that Glacier draws as many international visitors as like the Grand Canyon or Yellowstone.
Yeah,
but I think there are I think there are quite a few. Mm-hmm. It's just farther away. It's harder to get loads. To.
Like there's not
because where would they be busing from?
Exactly.
It's like pretty far out there.
Exactly. It's very far.
Although I mean there are for sure tours and tour buses that go there.
But not to the level you see in like Yellowstone or the Grand Canyon.
So Glacier, because all of those visitors are squeezed into a smaller season, and because most visitors are also concentrated in along the Going to the Sun Road. From one side of the park to the other, that road passes over the mountains, and from St. Mary to
Lake McDonald.
Lake McDonald. And so most people are kind of in that corridor. There are the park is vast beyond that, and if you go to one of the other areas, there's the Many Glacier area, which also sees a lot of visitors, but then there are other places in the park that really don't get a lot of visitation. But if you're in that corridor, they do have a shuttle. The parking lots fill up. You feel the visitation there.
Yep.
I think you feel it. There's
a lot of people. It has that kind of Disney World vibe that Yellowstone does sometimes, but they're well prepared for it. It's not, it's okay. I think it requires you to show up early to make sure that you get a parking spot at the visitor center.
Be patient.
You will definitely be taking the shuttle.
Have a campground.
And you will be glad for having taken the shuttle. The shuttle is really good.
It's nice not to have to park.
It's really good. It's essential to not have to park. You will probably wait around for the shuttle. There are schedules, and they do their best to try and eliminate, big groups of people having to queue up for the shuttle, which they do a pretty good job of. But you'll still can have to wait around, and
that's
sometimes
part of the experience.
It is unique that you get shuttle serviced high alpine hikes, which is really cool. That like you can go up to Logan Pass and then hike the High Line down to a shuttle stop and then get picked up and taken back to your hotel.
Very convenient.
Super convenient. And that, like, that accessibility means that so many other people who are not hardcore get to experience the scenery, and you get to have that hardcore high alpine experience in just like super convenience, which is great because that means people like us get to go do that stuff.
You can, people with kids, people with
totally.
I really love that about it. I do feel like Glacier is one of the park, well, kind of an old school park where access has edged out preservation in some senses, in the sense that like there are roads and trails and lodges in places where I don't think they would be built now if that were to be made a park now. However, it's cool to me that there's a balance in the National Park Service of that. There are places where they've left things less touched.
And I mean, it makes a good argument for not paving a road through the North Cascades or something, because you've got the going to the sun road, you know, like there are things in the national park system to give people that experience.
We have that. We don't need to put those roads everywhere, but now that one's there, it's extremely cool.
We're glad that it's there. We enjoy it very much.
And yeah, I think Glacier is, I think I would put it on the less intimidating to visit because of the crowds, but I would strongly advise, like with Yellowstone, like with Yosemite, that you do good advanced preparation of all of the details of where you're going to stay and getting around and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a show up and wing it, unless you're like a big rubber tramper and you can just go wherever.
Yeah. Yeah.
But for your average visitor, plan.
It's a planner. Some of these, like Cuyahoga Valley, you don't need to plan. You can just show up and have a good time.
You just stay at the Crystal Inn down the road.
Exactly. Like you can show up and have a good time. You can get lunch at McDonald's and then go for a hike. But yeah, Glacier, not so much.
Yeah. So this has been the top 10 most visited national parks of 2022. We hope you have enjoyed taking this journey through the list with us.
It's been good. It's been a journey. Hopefully this is useful or interesting. And we'll catch you in the next one.